Hello and welcome back to the NESN Patriots podcast. I'm Zach Cox, back home in Boston. Dakota Randall coming to you from beautiful Green Bay. He's out there this week, as are the Patriots, who just wrapped up their second joint practice with the Packers, and they are preparing to play a preseason game against Green Bay on Saturday night. Sounds like from monitoring this week from afar, especially today, the second joint practice, it sounds like we have quite a lot to cover in this podcast. But Dakota, how we doing out there?
Doing well. It's interesting being out here at this time of the year instead of in the fall or the winter. It's been pretty hot. It's also been pretty windy, kind of like those days where you think you're not getting a sunburn because it's so windy, but you in fact get back to the hotel and you're super red. But it's good. It's, exploring more of Green Bay, you realize there really is nothing out here except for Lambeau. I've asked multiple locals, like, got any tourist trap recommendations for me? And they're all like, no, there's nothing to do here. So thankfully, there's been a lot of good football to watch and talk about.
It's still kind of a bizarre setting for a professional football team, but definitely a unique one.
Quick anecdote to sort of drive home how small of a town this really is. Which also, I think I found out today that Green Bay has a smaller population than Manchester, New Hampshire. So wrap your mind around that. My Uber that picked me up from the airport on Tuesday night wound up being the same Uber driver who picked me up from a brewery in the middle of town last night. The same Brent with a red Ford Escape picked me up, separated by 2 nights. So that's how small it is. You get the same Uber twice in a couple of days.
Shout out Brent, much appreciated. Let's get into today's practice. I mean, so again, we're splitting, kind of doing a little divide and conquer with these joint practices. I'll be down in Nashville next week for the Patriots Titans ones. Dakota obviously is out in Green Bay for the last 2 days with the Packers. It seemed like day one was a rather standard practice. But then waking up today and just following you and the rest of the Patriots beat on Twitter, it seemed like today was just chaos in many different regards. Just break down for us what you saw out there on the practice field today. Yeah.
And I think real quick on yesterday, I would just say solid day for the Patriots. I think I thought it was better than maybe some of the other guys did. They really started fast on offense. And then as the practice went on, just more penalties, more sloppy stuff. It just wasn't as tightened up. But when they were locked in, I thought they did a pretty good job. And then on defense, sort of the same deal. They started off really giving trouble to Jordan Love and the Packers offense. And then as practice went on, there were just some breakdowns, specifically with the Packers getting big plays. Like the Packers wouldn't do much. Then they'd hit a shot play for like 35 yards that kind of skewed things. It was a solid day, but yeah, nothing compared to what today was. It looked like, especially the Patriots, either watched some film last night or someone said something overnight because they came out today with their what's on fire. And it was really right from the start. I mean, the way it's set up there, it's 2 regular football fields sort of attached, sort of back to back, like, there's one and then one right after it. So on one field on the left is the Patriots defense and the Packers offense. And on the other one is Patriots offense, Packers defense. So you really have to pick one. You can't, it's almost impossible to watch both while they're going on at the same time. So most people obviously picked the offense. And we're all just trying to watch the Patriots offense. And then it felt like 10 seconds, you would hear, that sound of a practice fight. People yelling, the crowd getting into it a little bit. And you look over and there was just shoving and, general chaos. And there were like 4 or 5 of those in the first 5 minutes, both teams kind of separating, going off into huddles to try and reset and calm down. It never worked.
I saw a helmet flying up in the air at some point from one of the videos out of practice.
Yeah, that was during, there's a video of it?
Yeah, somebody from the stands took a video of, you see just a scrum and then a Packers player's helmet just goes flying up in the air. I think a ref actually catches it, like fair catch style.
Yeah, I believe that was Keon White. Ripping off a helmet of, I'm not sure which player it was. It might have been Keyshawn Banks, but I'm not sure. So yeah, that happened. I think the first one was Matthew Judon not letting what's his name, Tyler Kraft, the tight end, get off the ground.
Tucker Kraft, yeah.
Tucker Kraft. He wouldn't let him get off the ground. He was kind of giving him the business, keeping him down. Then they started pushing and shoving. Jabril Peppers just talking a bunch of trash. Christian Barmore got involved in that first one. Jalen Mills too. And then it was just the same thing over and over and over. And then it started to bleed into on the offensive side because the Patriots offense was dominating the Packers defense so much that they started to get frustrated. And the Patriots, I mean, there was one stretch where Bailey Zappi was the quarterback down at like the 5-yard line, and he got 6 straight touchdown passes. And the Patriots with each one got more and more, loud about it in the end zone. Ezekiel Elliott was really fired up with Kayshon Boutte. Demario Douglas spun the ball in the end zone, and a Packers player came and kicked it off the scoreboard. So that started to get chippy too. And it just sort of permeated throughout the whole thing. It was, wildly entertaining.
It was funny talking to Matthew Slater, was one of the final players that we talked to that spoke with the media before the Patriots left for Green Bay. And we were like, oh, what are you looking to see this week from the team? He basically was like, let's not have any fights. He referenced back to last year with the Carolina Panthers, where it was just kind of, there were fists flying left and right. I think there was like 8 guys kicked out of practice over 2 days. There was a brawl that spilled into the stands. And he was like, let's not have that. And then I'm following along on the timeline today, and it was like, there are now 6 fights in this practice. Wait, no, there are now 7 fights in this practice. There are now 8 fights in this practice. I think it was only 1 player ended up getting ejected. Is that right? It was just Anthony Jennings.
Yeah. And I would say, this is just my own personal opinion. It's hard to explain, but this one just felt like more of a real football sort of, intensity and skirmishes. Whereas that thing with the Panthers last year just felt like the Panthers came in out of control.
Yeah. It's just a lot of bad discipline.
Yeah. That one just felt like, like no maturity. And like this one just felt like 2 teams that showed up wanting to make a statement today, playing really hard. Emotions ran high. And the Anthony Jennings play, it was during a punt drill. And Keon White, that's why I think Keon White got tangled up with the same guy whose helmet he ripped off. And that guy took a swing at Keon White. And then from like 15, 20 yards out, Anthony Jennings sort of flew in. And this was like, it looked like Keon White and the Packers player, they were like, we were, all right, let's stop. And then Anthony Jennings flies in and completely blindsides him and sends the guy back like 5 yards. And it was like, the moment that he did it, Mike Pellegrino was right in front of it, and he sort of turned around like, just knowing right away, like, yeah, he's ejected, he's got to go. Like Anthony Jennings in one motion leveled the guy, took off his helmet, and walked to the inside the facility.
See you guys.
Yeah.
See you guys tomorrow. I'm out of here.
And I talked to Christopher Price at the Globe, because he spent all day on the defensive side, and he said it looked like Anthony Jennings had wanted to do something like that from the start of practice. That he was from the start, you could sort of see it was going to come from, if anyone was going to get ejected, it was going to be him.
Yeah, the sense that I was getting was that it seemed like the Patriots kind of came out wanting to either send a message or make a statement, or just kind of make up for some of the maybe sloppiness or lack of energy or whatever that they had on the first day, and really kind of assert themselves a little bit more on day 2. And it sounds like this was a particularly good day for Mac Jones and the offense too. Is that right?
Yeah. And to that end, it sort of just felt like generally, I mean, the practices in Foxborough, it's weird. There's not a lot of contact. They've all felt pretty light on intensity, and there certainly was more yesterday, but today just sort of felt like a team that hadn't really played a real sort of football game or environment in a long time, and they wanted to hit people, and they wanted to play real football, and it felt like that all sort of came out all at once. And yeah, I mean, Mac Jones was probably the best practice I've seen him have. I mean, I've only been doing 2 training camps now, and last summer, anything compared to last summer, is going to win. But probably the best I've seen this summer. I think I had him for 14 out of 17, 5 sacks. Pressures were again an issue. I wouldn't say it was a disaster. There were just a couple of stretches where there wouldn't be much pressure for a couple periods, and then it would all come in one section. And yeah, he was great. I mean, he was decisive. Unlike the first day, there was only one bad ball, and it was underthrown. But yesterday, he had like a couple that should have been intercepted that were just dropped. But he had none of those today. He was really good in the red zone. And then the big play of the day, well, he had 2 big two big passes. One was a 45-yard pass to Tyquan Thorne near the beginning of practice, who landed on his shoulder and never and left the field and didn't come back to practice. Sort of makes you wonder if he did the same injury as last summer when he hurt his clavicle. And then the other play was at the end of practice, and maybe we can talk about that in a sort of separate thing, when he ended the 2-minute drive. It was the last play for Mac Jones in practice, and he finished a 2-minute drive with like a 50-yard touchdown pass to Devontae Parker, where the Patriots sideline emptied. Jabril Peppers is talking a bunch of crap to everybody. That was the loudest and most entertaining part of the whole practice for sure.
I've got some FOMO sitting at home. I'm not gonna lie. It looked like a fun time down there. But yeah, we'll get to those injuries in a sec, because those are mounting up a little bit for the Patriots. But I think we should touch on someone that you mentioned briefly, but the big news of the week from a Patriots perspective is Ezekiel Elliott is officially a Patriot. He signed with the team. I think he agreed to terms on Monday, officially signed either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, and was on the field for Wednesday's practice, and sounds like he was up to basically full participation today. Obviously fills a real need for the Patriots, one of their most obvious roster needs. They didn't have that reliable number 2 behind Ramondre Stevenson. It seemed like they were giving some of their younger backs an opportunity to try to grab that spot in the first 2 weeks of training camp. Pierre Strong didn't really do it. Now he's dealing with an injury. Kevin Harris didn't really do it. JJ Taylor didn't really do it. And Ty Montgomery has been out of practice since the early days of camp. So they really didn't have that backup, that running mate, whatever you want to call it, for Stevenson, which was obviously a big issue for them last season as well. And now Elliott seems like the ideal person to fill that spot. He's not going to be a 1,500-yard rusher like he was early in his career. He's certainly declined from those kind of the heyday that he had from 2016 to 2018 or 19. Definitely not as dynamic as he used to be, but still great in short yardage situations. He's always been a good pass blocker. He's only fumbled once over the last 2 seasons, and he's a guy that's proven that even though he has dealt with some injuries, he can carry a huge workload. He's had 230 plus carries in every season that he's played in the NFL. So it seems like an ideal situation, one that I think we all kind of expected to go this way over the last 3-4 weeks, however long it's been since he actually visited the Patriots. But it sounds like, or he's aboard now. It sounds like the teammates are happy to have him in there. Ramondre Stevenson said he's very excited to team up with him, thinks their skill sets will jive well with each other. And he's now in there. We'll see if he takes the field on Saturday night, but the fact that he's already up and getting into the mix in kind of full contact 11-on-11 drills seems to be a good sign for him.
Yeah, and yesterday it was just sort of, he did the stretching at the beginning, he did the jog through stuff, and just sort of individual agility drills, and that was it. He didn't participate in the 11-on-11s. That changed today. I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, both days, was like the busiest player out of anybody on the field. I mean, he got a ton of handoffs and a lot of catches too. But today, Ezekiel Elliott, he got work with both Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. I'd say predominantly Bailey Zappi. And I mean, yeah, did everything you'd expect. He caught passes. He took a lot of handoffs, especially on the goal line. He scored a few touchdowns in that period at the beginning of practice. But he also seemed like a good personality fit. I mean, right away, when the Patriots were giving it to the Packers defense early in practice, I mean, he was in there. He was loud, yelling at a lot of people. He seemed to get a real kick out of Jabril Peppers' trash talk at the end of practice. A lot of guys were gravitating toward him. It seemed like he had immediately bought in and was kind of enjoying everything. I mean, it was definitely a good welcome for him, these 2 practices coming out here. I'm sure it was more fun for him to be a part of these than it would have been if he went and did some of those lighter practices in Foxborough. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if his workload ramps up in Tennessee, because while he did participate more today, it wasn't like a ton. You can tell they are bringing him along somewhat slowly.
Yeah. Well, I think the culture fit's a good point there, because it's something that you always kind of worry about when there's a player of Elliott's status that's kind of in the back end of his career and is not going to be that number 1 guy, isn't going to be the kind of lead feature back in a backfield, especially someone who has as much kind of personality and charisma and profile as Elliott does. You wonder whether someone like that is going to be okay with just kind of being another face in the crowd, so to speak. So a kind of backup rotational type guy. But it does seem like he's buying in thus far, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like we haven't had a chance to be able to speak to him yet, but you can just kind of tell talking to the players that they're happy that he's here. And I do think he's going to be a really good fit. And I think, you touched on it earlier. I think in many ways he is exactly what they needed to get to back up Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, I know a lot of people wanted Dalvin Cook, but I just don't think that ever really made sense. I mean, that's a guy who wants to be a starter, is still a star running back. And he was never going to come here and accept being, at every third drive, I'll get the carries and do that thing for behind, a kid in Ramondre Stevenson. That never made sense for him. So I think Ezekiel Elliott in many ways, fits the bill for exactly what they needed.
And I think from a contractual standpoint too, the deal the Patriots ended up signing him to is pretty team friendly. It maxes out at $6 million for the 1 year, but to get that, he needs to play at least 70% of snaps, and he needs to have at least 1,475 yards from scrimmage, which would basically mean he needs to have one of the best seasons ever by a Patriots running back. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, even if Stevenson is lost for 12 weeks out of the year, he's probably not going to hit those numbers. And if he basically has the exact same season he had with Dallas last year, he'd end up making just under $3 million. So financially, it's not a huge burden for the Patriots. All of the incentives that he has in his contract are they're quote unquote not likely to be earned, which means they don't count against the salary cap. So it seems like he's a very affordable player who fits what the Patriots needed in that spot. So again, seems like a good deal and seems like he'll be a good fit for the Patriots. But you mentioned the injuries a little earlier. We'll close out on that. They're kind of starting to stack up for the Patriots. Three more players left practice today. There was Tyquan Thornton, Keon White, and Jake Andrews, the rookie lineman. You add those guys to a list of players that already includes Pierre Strong, Ty Montgomery, Jonathan Jones, Cole Strange, who seems to be working his way back from the injury, but not quite ready to be back yet. Connor McDermott also wasn't at practice today. You got guys like Cody Russi, some lower level backup type players, but there are a dozen or so people on this Patriots team right now that are dealing with some sort of injury. Mike Owenu is probably the most important one. We haven't seen him on the field all summer. Calvin Anderson as well. So it's not the kind of big time, huge marquee names, but there are a lot of people that are expected to play important roles on this Patriots team this year that currently are not on the field or are dealing with some sort of injury.
Yeah. And I think, the thing about the Patriots offensive line is if everyone's healthy, I do think they could be like a very good line.
They're solid.
With Trent Brown, Cole Strange, David Andrews, Mike Onwenu. I mean, I think that's a great four if they stay healthy. But they have to get back. We did see Mike Onwenu doing some jogging today on like the side practice field, similar to what we've seen him do in Foxborough. He looks all right, but who knows, right? The McDermott injury, I think it shouldn't. The Patriots shouldn't be in a position where a Connor McDermott injury is a big deal, but they kind of are because they again, these two practices they had City Sal, the rookie, who played guard in college, now is playing tackle again. He's been the right tackle when Mac Jones has been quarterback. And with Connor McDermott not available now, the only other options you have there are Riley Reef, who has been really bad at right tackle whenever he's played there this summer. And Andrew Stuber would be the only other option. And then whoever they got some scrap right tackle recently. I don't remember his name, who they signed. He's been out there the last couple of days.
Oh, Micah Vanterpool.
Yeah. But that's it. So
undrafted rookie guy. Yeah. There.
Yeah. So that's not great. I mean, McDermott's out. Calvin Anderson hasn't played. So it's getting kind of dicey over there. The good news is that Trent Brown has been playing these 2 days and he's looked good and he looks like he's in good shape, but it's just, it's a house of cards in that offensive line. He has to stay healthy. And it's just the depth behind him now is getting concerning. Some of those players haven't been playing all that well, and then some of them are now getting hurt, like Jake Andrews. So I think it's concerning for sure.
And I mean, at the moment, we're like 3 weeks away from the start of the regular season. We really have no idea who's going to be playing right tackle for the Patriots, because initially it was Riley Reif at the start of the summer. Then it was Connor McDermott. But then even before Connor McDermott got hurt, after he had that rough game at left tackle against the Texans last week, he was behind Sidy Sow in the rotation for the final 2 practices before the Patriots left for Green Bay. So it seems like they've tried out 3 different players in that role so far this summer. Calvin Anderson could be somebody who factors in there if he ever gets back from the non-football illness list. Mike Owenu has played right tackle well in the past, even though the Patriots have always preferred to keep him at right guard. So there's like 4 or 5 different players that can play there. And it's really hard to identify even a clear favorite for that spot right now. I think I agree with what you said off the top there. I think if they have whatever their preferred starting 5 is, if you have those 4 players locked in at left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, you can kind of make do with whatever you have at right tackle, especially because you would assume Bill O'Brien would be a little bit more better equipped to scheme around a hole like that than Matt Patricia was last season. But yeah, it doesn't seem like they've really made any decision on that spot, which was probably the single biggest weak link on their entire team last year. So it's a little bit concerning that they haven't found some sort of an answer there.
Yeah, and I think if you're a Patriots fan, it's especially discouraging when you think, Bill Belichick wouldn't sell himself short on defense, right? I mean, he makes sure he has depth, and he's got every position covered there. He's got, all the assets that he needs over there. And then it just seems like there's always, whether it be receiver, whether it be running back up until now with getting Ezekiel Elliott, whether it be these tackle spots, they just sort of make it up as they go sometimes, or they leave themselves short or in bad situations. And it's just playing with fire because, and it's too bad because I do think the Patriots, while they have their issues, I do think they could be pretty good this year. And I think especially if Mac Jones takes a step forward, I think they could potentially be a playoff team. But it's not an overstatement to say that it all could be undermined by bad offensive line play, specifically from the tackle spots. And if that happens, I mean, they did that to themselves by not addressing the need the way they should have in the offseason. But like we said, it might all work out. It could all work out. They have the talent. It is just kind of a house of cards.
Yeah, it'll be a valid second guess if they continue to have problems at that right tackle spot, just because you look at even the options that they have there. Reif, McDermott, Calvin Anderson, all were backups at the start of last season. Sidy Sow is a rookie who played guard for the last 4 years. Andrew Stuber is a 7th round pick last year who hasn't played in a regular season NFL game. So there's not really a sure thing on there. It's good for them that they finally got Trent Brown back, kind of locked in there on the left side. He's back practicing. He's back looking well. But yeah, the right side remains a big question mark. And then the other development today on the offensive side was Tyquan Thornton. It just seems like he can't really get out of his own way from an injury perspective. It's unfortunate for him. It's really happened. I mean, we don't know the severity of the injury that he suffered today, but if it's something that'll sideline him, this is really the 3rd time that it's happened to him already. I mean, last summer he looked pretty good in training camp. I say he certainly looked promising. Then he went out and broke his collarbone in, I believe it was either the first or second preseason game, sidelined him for the first month plus of the regular season. Then you fast forward to this past spring, looks really good in the first OTA practice that they had in front of reporters. Then he suffered an injury, missed the rest of the spring, and now really slow start to training camp for him. Pretty disappointing start, dealt with some sort of a minor injury along the way. But over this last week or so, it seemed like he'd finally been gaining a little bit of momentum and seemed to be moving in the right direction. And now you get another injury. And as you mentioned earlier, could even potentially be a similar kind of injury that he had last year. It's just a guy who needs to be building kind of some positive progress, and it just hasn't happened for him.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's too bad because the practice got off to a good start today for him. You wonder if he would have been able to build on it with the way the Patriots play today. So it's definitely, it's tough. We'll have to see, if we get any sort of report on that. But while we're on the receivers, I did want to mention, just, who did what the other receivers did these last couple of days. I would say the top performer was Devontae Parker. Certainly yesterday, I think he had 5 catches. And then again today, I mean, he was their best receiver. He had that touchdown at the end of practice. I believe he had one from Bailey Zappi. He just looked great. He played really well. Demario Douglas did have a drop, which was rare for him this summer, but I think he had like 9 catches today and like 3 touchdowns. I think he only caught 1 pass from Mac Jones, and most of it was with Bailey Zappi, but he was great. A lot of work for Kendrick Bourne. Hunter Henry had a great catch today where he was the Packers player committed a defensive pass interference. The flag was thrown, but it was a great, like, in the bucket pass from Mac Jones, like 25 yards. Great play by Hunter Henry. The only player who was kind of disappointing was Juju Smith-Schuster. He didn't do much these 2 days. He had a bad drop yesterday during a 2-minute drill. He had a catch today, I think, to start the 2-minute drill at the end of practice, but just didn't do a whole lot. I'm not saying he was bad. Just didn't see him too much. It was really the other guys. Good stuff from Kendrick Bourne, and then just a lot of passes in the flat to Ramondre Stevenson, which has been the case kind of throughout the summer.
Yeah, Demario Douglas continues to be kind of the star of training camp in a lot of different ways, and
he was talking trash today too.
He's a feisty kid. I like him. I like the way he plays.
He had one because the Packers were doing this thing where the Packers defense, where the whistle would blow and they would always come in and try and rip the ball out or deliver one little shove right after the whistle. Nothing like dirty, just a little bit extra. And Demario Douglas was kind of, after he scored, sort of stomped off the field and was like, toughest team in the league after the whistle or something like that. So there was just stuff like that all day long. It was good stuff.
And I mean, an injury that we didn't mention earlier that could factor into all these players is Mike Gesicki, who suffered a shoulder injury earlier in the week before the Patriots went to Green Bay. Patriots reportedly hope that he'll be back for week 1, but if he's not, that's probably going to be a situation where the Patriots are going to have to rely a little bit more on maybe a player like Douglas, maybe a Kendrick Bourne, somebody who probably would not be quite as much in the kind of primary pass catching rotation if the Patriots are running those 2 tight end sets that they want to use. But if Gesicki's not out there, you're probably going to have to dig a little bit deeper into that passing game. So I would say encouraging signs that those players are playing well. Patriots are off Friday. They play the Packers at Lambeau on Saturday night. Any final thoughts from your couple days out in good old Wisconsin?
Yeah, a few. I would say on the tight end, I do think Anthony Ferkser had a good couple of days, mostly with Bailey Zappi. Seems like it's between him and Sokol right now for who's going to get first reps if Gesicki can't go to start the season. So we'll have to see. On the defensive side, it was tough to tell because I think the Patriots played a lot of zone the last couple of days. So there were stretches where Christian Gonzalez would give up like a 20-yard pass. He gave up that 50-yard pass to Christian Watson yesterday, but he was in zone, and I think it was just a miscommunication or bad reads. It's not like he was getting burned in coverage per se. So there were plays like that. I say Jack Jones was up and down. He was better today than yesterday, but still pretty good. There was one reporter who was a Packers reporter who I was talking to today when I went over to the defensive side and said, who's standing out on defense? And he was like, who's this Keon White kid? He's a monster. Because he was playing primarily against the Packers' second and third team offense, and everyone was saying he was completely destroying everybody and that he needs to stop playing against backup offenses. He had a ridiculous spin move yesterday that we all were like, opened all of our eyes, like, holy crap. I would say not awesome from Christian Gonzalez, not bad. Kind of looks like how he's looked all summer. Like once the pads came on, like he's got a ways to go in terms of physicality. But that's really it. Marcus Jones had an interception today, so did Kyle Duggar. It was good. One other note on the defense, I'd like Marte Mapu to put his red jersey back on because I no longer can spot him.
That was the one benefit of it. You're like, oh, he's right there. He's the one guy in red on defense.
Yeah, I haven't noticed him at all, and I don't necessarily think that's because he's doing anything wrong. It's just because I've been trained to look for the red 30. So yeah, that stuff. And then I would just say that I'll leave it on what I think was sort of the defining moment of the practice today, the sequence at the end where it was in the last 5 to 10 minutes where the Patriots were doing their 2-minute drive. Mac Jones started, I think it was a sack, then 3 straight completions, and then Jair Alexander, the cornerback for the Packers, was coming over to get lined up on the side of the field where the Patriots sideline is. And as he was walking over, I mean, him and Jabril Peppers were just barking at each other. Peppers kind of doing the, I'm still here, I haven't gone anywhere. Jair Alexander talking a bunch of trash. Mike Pellegrino turned around and told everybody to shut the what up and to stop talking on the sideline. So everybody was pretty fired up. And then on that exact play, Mac Jones hit Devontae Parker for the 50-yard touchdown. All the players ran to the end zone. Jabril Peppers was talking a bunch of trash the whole time, went up to Mac Jones and was really fired up. And then when the Packers got the ball back, it was their backup offense. I can't remember the backup quarterback's name right now. But they were going, and it was towards the end of the drive, and he fired, like a 30-something yard pass into the end zone. It should have been an easy pick for Adrian Phillips, but it bounced off his hand, ricocheted off like two bodies, and fell into the player's, lap for a touchdown. And the Packers, kind of with a little payback, they emptied out their sideline, ran to the end zone. Jair Alexander came right over for the Patriots sideline, started yelling at Jabril Peppers, who slowly walked out onto the field to kind of meet him. And my first thought was like, what are we going to do here? But then they dapped up and started laughing, and everybody was shaking hands and having a great time. So there was nothing nasty. Unlike that Panthers stuff last year, I don't think there was a ton of bad blood. I just think it was two good competitive teams that really came out today and wanted to play hard and make a statement. And the Patriots ultimately made the bigger one, I think.
Good old football. Hopefully for my sake that we get a practice down in Nashville that's anywhere near as entertaining as this one there out in Green Bay today.
I feel like it could be. I feel, with Mike Vrabel and the way his players play for him, I feel like it could be a similar sort of vibe. We'll have to see.
Should definitely be fun. Regardless, we're going to get to see some DeAndre Hopkins, obviously some Mike Vrabel, some interesting players over on that Texans roster. But first, the Patriots do have that game, the preseason game against the Packers on Saturday night. You can follow along with both of us for live coverage of that game. Follow me on Twitter at Zach Cox NESN. Follow Dakota at Dak Randall. No more Dak Randall NESN. He's evolved to a new era now. And you can obviously follow all of our Patriots coverage before, during, and after that game on NESN.com.